All right, Tigers, here we go. Tuesday, 4/7. Reagan's second term in the Iran-Contra affair. Just going to quickly go and check lesson plans. Guess what? No homework over the break. When we get back on Tuesday, we'll start with H.W. Bush's biography. So we get that ready to go and organized. So the focus for today, guys, is this issue of Reagan's second term domestically, plus this Iran-Contra scandal we'll get to, identifying the important players and how it sort of played out, and we should be able to compare it somehow to Watergate. We'll get to that going on. So one of the big goals of the Reagan administration, when we talked about being an ultimate Republican, is the idea of decreasing regulation. And what happened is when you started taking the clamps off of big business and the banks that FDR had put on in the 1930s, you start to see a run on this idea of insider trading. That's making a trade in the stock market with information that hasn't gone public yet. So possibly you can make a lot of money before something hits, right? And mergers of companies got a lot bigger. You can see this graphic down here. All these other companies used to be phone companies. Now they're all part of AT&T, right? So what happened is that Reagan correctly thought that by removing restrictions on the banks, it would create more competition between the banks, and they would then find a way to try and make more money. One of the issues is, however, is that it took away, banks in the past used to be a lot more stingy with whom they would loan to. But now, banks wanted more money, so the more loans they churned out would create more opportunities to make a profit, right? So they started giving loans to a lot of people, and a lot of people that shouldn't have had the loans. Okay, so this idea of laissez-faire. Now, one of the things that the Reagan administration did is they did keep the FDIC insurance in place. FDIC, of course, is Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation of America. They secure all deposits within the banks to keep them going. Well, quickly, once banks started giving loans to people that shouldn't have gotten loans and they couldn't pay their mortgages, real estate markets started to collapse. The banks could not pay their money back to their investors, and then so on and so forth. You see, it cost the taxpayer, about $160 billion, meaning the federal government had to bail out the banks and the mortgage companies to a tune of about $160 billion. Now, thank God, this will never happen again. 2008, all right? So, you'll start to see this play out a little more. A few weeks ago, you guys remember that seeing, or I'm sure talking about, we talked about the circuit breakers in the stock market being flipped when the market drops by a huge amount at one point. Here, guys, on Black Monday, the market fell by 508 points. Now, in terms of percentages, that's about 20% of the market disappeared in short order. That's so important, guys, because people lost about $1 trillion that day. Now, recently, the market has fallen by upwards of 12% in one day, but not enough to hit the second circuit breaker like we talked about. This was the largest one-day decline in U.S. history, not anymore, of course. And people were worried about what was going on in the market with the banks and this issue of inflation. And would we go back to an inflationary policy that had hit years ago, like we talked about with Nixon and Ford and Carter, right? So the reason for this concern is, and I know you've already seen this slide, but I bring it back, is because the government started running all of these giant deficits under the Reagan administration. There's Carter's last year, and we said that he made a deficit was about $70 billion. $59 billion, right? So you could see these just get larger, and then they get even bigger. Okay, and then they get smaller. We'll talk about that later when we get into the Clinton administration, right? So all the way back. George Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Taft, the fat guy, all those guys, right? From Washington to Carter, combined national debt, $1.5 trillion. Reagan in 8 years, $2 trillion in debt. So almost 200 years of history, $1.5 trillion in debt. 8 years of American history, $2 trillion in debt. Annual deficits over $200 billion. Reason why that's important is with the climbing up of the debt and the issues that come forward, especially in terms of social programs. There is this belief that future Americans will have to work harder than your parents, meaning some of your parents will be able to collect Social Security at 65, or now that number seems to be indexing later and later and later. So some beliefs are out there saying that your generation will have to work until they're almost 70. The median income line between rich and poor fell, and the median income fell, and the line between rich and poor started to grow. Okay, if you're looking at recent budgets, and I know I listed 2008 here as one, what are the three biggest drivers of our budget? Entitlements, defense, and interest on the debt. So notice, down here, even during the war, guys, we weren't really running a large debt. And then we get to here, and what happens? Then it starts to flatten out a little bit, and it spikes. We'll talk about the reasons for that going on. Okay, up, down, left, right, BA, select, start. Right? Konami code, right? 79, Nicaragua. We had talked about how Anastasio Somoza was letting us do whatever we wanted to in Nicaragua. Carter came out and said we should support this group of communists known as the Sandinistas. So in 79, Carter, under the Carter administration, Nicaragua went basically communist. We were afraid that communism might spread, back to the old Kennedy idea of communism spreading in Latin America. So in November of 1981, Reagan gave $19 million to this group known as the Contras. They were Somoza's former army and police. And Espanol-Contra is against, right? So Congress is like, what? What are you doing giving money to these people that we don't know? Like back we talked about with Ford and Angola, Congress saying no more Vietnams, right? So Congress passed the Bolin Amendment, named for Senator Bolin, you don't know who that is, that said the CIA can't be given money to Nicaragua anymore. So, shocking as this is to believe, Reagan told a friend of his in the National Security Council, I want you to help the Contras. And here's the key point there. Do whatever you can to help the Contras, even if it's possibly illegal. And we'll get to that point, okay? At the same time, guys, Reagan wanted to free hostages held by an Iranian group in Lebanon. So on the other side of the world, so here's Nicaragua, here's Lebanon. So Reagan wanted to get these hostages out, okay? But you got to keep the oil flowing. And remember Reagan said, terrorists are everywhere, you can run but you can't hide. So Reagan needs to get away to find a way to get these hostages home as well. So we start selling missiles to Israel and then put them on trucks and drive them to Iran. So this whole line of terrorists are everywhere, you can run but you can't hide, is sort of proven false because now we're giving you exactly what you want. Okay? Iran's going to get these missiles to fight Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war, and they're going to let our guys go. Okay? Now, here's the kicker. Okay? Publicly, we're supporting Iraq. Privately, let me go back. Privately, we're supporting Iran. So now we're selling weapons to both nations of a war to kill each other. Not good, right? So, and here's the best part. During war, prices rise. So North overcharges the Iranians by 38%, pays the military back, and then takes the profits and gives them to the Contras. So that's how North was able to settle an issue in Iran with money that he then gave to the Contras in Nicaragua. That's why it's called the Iran-Contra affair, right? So when word broke about this happening, a Beirut newspaper named Al Shira broke the story. One of the trucks with American missiles broke down on the way to Iran, and reporters found it and broke the story. Here's the issue that Reagan had. If he admits it, guys, they're going to impeach him because he went directly against Congress at this point. If he denies it, then who in the heck is running the country? Well, of the two options, Reagan again denies it. We know for a fact that he knew what was going on since then, but he denies it. North takes responsibility and said that he was following orders. When asked whose order he was following, he took the Fifth Amendment. and they never forced him to testify. Who gave him these orders? North is going to be charged with 3 felonies: obstruction of justice, destroying documents, and receiving illegal gratuities. Eventually, North will be freed, okay, on a technicality. And you can't be charged with the same crime twice. That term is called double jeopardy. But in the end, with all of these bad things, one of the nicknames that we gave Reagan earlier was known as the Teflon President. Will he be blamed for all of these things? The answer is no. Right? So, a good lesson to see what's going on. We're going to talk on Tuesday when you guys get back about how you compare Iran-Contra and Watergate and what came of at that point. Okay? So Tuesday, Bush is by, a little bit of comparison. Have a great holiday break. Go Tigers.